We never talked about the rabbits. I don't know about you, but when I watched Jordan Peele's movie Us, something about those rabbits did not sit right with me. Like, I knew there was a deeper meaning to them, but I could not, for the life of me, figure out what they meant. And I probably watched that movie like 5 times before I actually understood all the themes in the movie. And I don't know about you, but when there's symbolism in a movie and I know it's supposed to mean something deeper and I can't figure it out, it just does not sit right with me. It's been on my mind over and over again. Because the rabbits were so briefly in the movie, it was at the beginning when they were locked in cages and then the end when they were all set free. I knew it meant something, but I could not figure out what. If you watched my Movies with a Message episode on how Jordan Peele's Us represents your shadow self and how to understand it, you'll notice that I just left them out. Because at that point in my life and in my understanding, I didn't know how they fit in. Like, I saw a lot of different symbolisms and meanings for what rabbits meant, but I was just stuck. I was not getting it because they were so briefly in the movie. To me, it didn't make sense. Nothing in my research was revealing it, and I was like, well, this is just going to be a mystery. I was just gonna leave it where it was at. But to my surprise, I feel like I might have cracked the case. I think I know how the rabbits fit into the overall message of understanding your shadow self. But I also want to know what you think, because, this is all speculation. And definitely up to interpretation, as Jordan Peele says himself. So if you're watching this video on Patreon, pause it and vote in the post below on what you think the rabbit symbolism means specifically in this movie. Don't worry, I'll wait. Because personally, I found so many different meanings of rabbits and rabbit symbolism that I didn't think any of them really fit until now. So, for the most part, the symbolism I see of rabbits usually stands for fertility because, rabbits multiply really quickly, good luck, and abundance. And to some degree, you probably could relate that to the overall theme of this movie, if you tried hard, But one thing I did notice about the rabbits is that the first clip of rabbits we see, it's like at the very beginning, all the rabbits are locked in the cage, and most of them are white. There's probably like 1 or 2 that are black, and then some of them are black and white. So it's given yin and yang. So in my research, the first plausible idea was that the rabbits were a spiritual symbol of new beginnings. And this symbolism comes around because rabbits are usually spring animals. You start to see rabbits, baby rabbits, an abundance of rabbits in spring, which symbolizes like a fresh new beginning, which I could see. But I don't know. It felt a little bit dry. It felt a little bit mid. Like, it didn't feel like this was the only answer. Because there are so many symbols of new beginnings. And I think there are a lot more potent symbols of new beginnings. So, scratch that one off the list. Because I feel like we can go deeper. Next up, I could also see them being a symbol of vulnerability. Because they're a prey animal without that many defense mechanisms. So they're prone to being hunted. They literally live in an always vulnerable state. And technically, your shadow is like the most vulnerable part of you because it holds a lot of pain. And then they're locked up in the beginning, which I could see as them being set free as everyone embracing their most vulnerable parts. The most vulnerable parts of themselves throughout the movie, set free. I still feel like that didn't really fit. It doesn't sit, like the puzzle piece does not click together for me, in my opinion. And I feel like we can go deeper. So scratch that one off the list. But not fully, maybe like question mark. And then something about the white rabbit stood out to me because that was the very first rabbit we saw, was the all-white albino looking rabbit. So I looked up white rabbits specifically. That opened some new doors that I hadn't considered. When I looked up white rabbits specifically, I kept seeing the word purity. And when I looked up black rabbits, that had a lot about introspection and self-discovery. So now I felt like we were getting somewhere. I was like, we're definitely close. And then somehow in that rabbit hole, literally, I stumbled across the idea or the word spiritual purification. Sorry, something is out my window. I stumbled across the word spiritual purification. And that's where things got interesting. Lots of bells started going off. Okay, so after looking into spiritual purification, my understanding is that spiritual purification is basically a catalyst for when we want to transform our lives. Let me explain. To some degree, when we are looking for transformation, when our soul, our body, our mind is seeking to create something more than what we currently are experiencing, that's kind of like the first step in our growth. The first step to acknowledging that we may have a shadow. Because in acknowledging this, in acknowledging that the current state you are in is not all you can be, you also acknowledge at the same time that there is something holding you back from that, whether you're conscious of it or not. So I guess so for example, I personally, before I get into a rant about my experience, purification, what I found about the purification process. Yeah, no, I stand on what I said. I'm just not going to rant about myself. All right, so once we recognize that we want that transformation to occur, the next step is the spiritual purification. That is the process of acknowledging your shadow and letting it fall away. And the more we let those shadow parts of ourselves fall away, the closer we get to living as our true selves, our actual soul. Usually a lot of people seek transformation when it comes to their health and their, physical body. There, in that moment, you're seeking the transformation to become this image of yourself that you probably could achieve in your head. Usually, if it's in a healthy way, the transformation that you're seeking. In that acknowledgement, at the same time, you also acknowledge that what you're currently doing is not as healthy for your body as it could be. That the choices you're making are not the choices that are naturally in alignment with who your soul is. If you wanted to become closer to that version of yourself that you have an understanding of in your head, that your soul is trying to be, the health conscious baddie you want to be, then you have to let go of the shadowy parts of the habits that you have now. Like for me, it's like the emotional eating. Am I eating to fill an emotional need, an emptiness inside of myself? I had to let that go. Or any of the limiting beliefs. If I want to have the healthiest version of my body, what's limiting me from actually doing it, taking the steps? Is it a limiting belief that exercise doesn't work? Because, I used to exercise all the time and I never saw any progress and I never really felt any healthier. So maybe I created this limiting belief that exercise doesn't work. And shedding that in order to become the healthiest version of myself. Something like that. I guess I should read this description of the purification process. The spiritual purification process comes from lightomega.org. And there's a lot of information about their interpretation of the spiritual purification process on here. This is like a really good paragraph. It's a good paragraph. I'm just going to read it. I'm going to kind of summarize because it's like really wordy and one of those paragraphs that'll probably make you zone out when you listen to it. So it says, as we seek greater self-awareness today, it becomes important to know more about the deeper levels of who we are. They go on to mention that we gain access to our soul and that our soul is not our personality. And in order to recognize our soul, that we have to let go of certain limiting beliefs that have created a false idea of who we are. Letting go of these limiting beliefs and addressing your shadow is the process that they're referring to as spiritual purification. And the more we let go of this idea, false idea of who we are, the closer we can get to our soul. And that's why a lot of us have this need or this urge or this pull to transform ourselves, to transform our lives, because we feel that need to become closer to our soul. So, after kind of getting the understanding of what spiritual purification is, it makes me believe that the white rabbits being locked up in a cage in Jordan Peele's movie Us and then set free by the end of the movie makes me feel like they're there to represent kind of what happens when you do go through this spiritual purification process. You become aware of who you are and who you're currently living as, and then you become aware of the things that are sitting in your shadow, and the things that you have ignored in your shadow for so long fight back. And you can either choose to fight them physically the hard way, or you can choose to acknowledge that they are a part of you, that you are becoming consciously aware of them, and that you just choose not to act on them. You choose not to let them rule you. I think it's just so interesting. But yeah, when the rabbits are set free, it is almost like you stop fighting. You stop fighting your shadow. You allow yourself to be purified, to get closer to your soul. And I feel like this process is usually never intentional consciously. It all starts with that initial need and pull for transformation, where you are subconsciously like seeking your soul. So I don't know. I do know. So I think the white rabbits symbolize purity, purification. The white and black rabbits, and then along with that purity comes introspection. And so that's why there's like the black rabbits in there, but not as much. Yeah. And I just feel like that fits. I feel like that fits a lot more than the new beginnings, because that's dry, that's played out, everything's a new beginning. And I think it's almost kind of goes hands in hand with vulnerability, so I feel like that would be like a 2-for-1. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and definitely in the poll. I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to know what you guys think, because I feel like I have all these ideas and research, and I want to know other opinions. So let me know that. And as always, sending love and healing your way. Bye.